major political upheaval is unfolding in Madagascar, where the military has seized control of the government, declaring a transitional regime just hours after President Andry Rajoelina was impeached by Parliament. According to multiple sources, the president has since fled the country, amid growing unrest driven by weeks of youth-led protests and a deepening economic crisis. What began as demonstrations over power cuts and rising costs has now spiraled into the country's most serious political crisis in over a decade, marking a dramatic return of military rule in the island nation. Tonight, we break down what led to this moment, what it means for Madagascar's future. The announcement came on October 14th from Colonel Michael Rajoelina, a senior officer in the elite CAPSAT unit, who declared on state broadcaster Televisione Malagasy that the armed forces were suspending the 2010 constitution and establishing a transitional government.
In light of repeated violations of the constitution, disregard for human rights, and the plundering of national resources which have led to the deterioration of the economy and the mass exodus of youth and people across the country, we, the members of the Transitional Government for Reform, hereby issue this unconstitutional decree under the Constitution, reference number 2025.01, which suspends the 2010 Constitution in its conflicting provisions and establishes the framework for national reform.
Rajoelina added that all constitutional bodies established under the 2010 Constitution which are not aligned with the national reform are suspended.
This is in response to the Malagasy people's demand for the restoration of democracy, the rebuilding of trust in state institutions, and the establishment of a government based on justice, good governance, and accountability to the people. Accordingly, all constitutional bodies established under the 2010 Constitution that are not aligned with the national reform are hereby suspended. These include the Senate, the Constitutional Court, the Independent National Electoral Commission, the High Constitutional Court, HCC, and the High Council for the Defense of Democracy and the Rule of Law. However, the National Assembly will continue to operate.
President Andry Rajoelina, whose political career began with a similar power shift in 2009, is now at the center of the storm he once helped create. According to military and government sources cited by Reuters, Rajoelina left Madagascar on October 12th, reportedly aboard a French military aircraft. His departure came just hours before lawmakers voted to impeach him. In a pre-recorded video address shared online on the evening of October 13th, the 51-year-old president insisted he had relocated to a safe place to save his life, amid what he described as an attempted coup. However, his exact whereabouts remain unknown.
We have all seen that the crises that have occurred in the country have led to ruin and recession. There have been real plans since 25 September for a coup, an assassination attempt against me. When other African presidents proposed sending military contingents on a peacekeeping mission, I told them that this did not reflect the values of the Malagasy people, and I refused.
The military's intervention follows 3 weeks of mass protests, led predominantly by youth activists, many identifying with the global Gen Z protest movement. What began on September 25th as demonstrations over rolling power and water cuts quickly evolved into a broader uprising fueled by anger over corruption, unemployment, inflation, and what many see as years of failed leadership.
If Madagascan children are studying in darkness, where will the future of this nation be?
Drawing inspiration from movements in Sri Lanka and Nepal, protesters have mobilized tens of thousands in the capital, Antananarivo, calling for systemic change. A turning point came over the weekend when soldiers from the CAPSAT unit, the same force that helped bring Rajoelina to power in 2009, publicly withdrew support for the president and refused to fire on demonstrators. They later escorted protesters into the capital's main square and assumed control of key security institutions, installing new leadership in both the army and gendarmerie. Though the military maintains that this is not a coup, its firm grip on power and suspension of the constitution suggest otherwise. On October 14th, lawmakers in the National Assembly formally voted to impeach President Rajoelina, citing violations of constitutional norms, misuse of public resources, and actions deemed harmful to national unity.
Ladies and gentlemen, since his election to the presidency of the Republic of Madagascar, Mr. Andry Rajoelina has multiplied actions likely to compromise the dignity and neutrality attached to the presidential office. He has engaged in activities incompatible with his other functions and made personal use of public resources for the private benefit of his supporters. In application of Article 40.1 of the Constitution, the National Assembly, meeting in extraordinary session, shall pronounce the permanent dismissal of the President of the Republic due to his manifest incompatibilities and conflicts of interest, activities of a nature to harm the dignity of the nation and national unity.
Rajoelina had earlier tried to dissolve the lower house of parliament, a move that was immediately contested by opposition leaders who claimed it lacked legal basis.
This decree is not legally valid. The President of the National Assembly says he was not consulted.
As the transitional government takes shape, many Malagasy citizens are calling not only for reform, but for justice and accountability. Protests have continued outside City Hall in Antananarivo. Demonstrators have rejected Rajoelina's claims of a coup, accusing him instead of evading responsibility.
The evacuation of Andry Rajoelina was an act of interference by France in Madagascar. Why? Well, because it wasn't a coup d'etat, it was just a call from the people, a call for freedom of expression.
Symbolic gestures of public anger have been widespread. Coffins driven through crowds, portraits of slain protesters, and banners demanding justice for victims of state violence. According to UN estimates, the protests have left at least 22 dead and over 100 injured. The former government has disputed those figures. In his address, Colonel Andry Rajoelina said the transitional period will last no more than 2 years, during which time a national referendum will be held to adopt a new constitution and organise fresh elections.
The following transitional structures are established to rebuild Madagascar: a transitional government led by the head of state, the government, the current form of the National Assembly, and a judicial authority composed of a high reform court and various specialized judicial bodies. The transitional period shall last a maximum of 2 years, during which a national referendum will be held to adopt a new constitution and organize free elections for the new state institutions.
But with no civilian leadership currently appointed and deep divisions still present, uncertainty looms over Madagascar's political future. The island nation has seen numerous military-backed transitions since gaining independence from France in 1960. Whether this latest upheaval leads to democratic renewal or prolonged instability remains to be seen. As Madagascar enters yet another chapter of political transition, pressure is mounting on the military to deliver on its promises and to hand power back to civilians through free and fair elections. For now, the streets of Antananarivo remain tense, but filled with a generation demanding a different future.